Oh, I know, I know. No, I used to know this baby that used to eat mounds and mounds of salad. This baby would just eat mounds of salad. So, it's all it would eat. What? What do you mean? How do I know? How did I know a baby? Was it a baby I knew? Why is that a weird thing to say? I'm not like my friend's baby ate. I don't know. I knew the baby. Doesn't matter who had the baby. Anyway, yeah, whatever. The baby liked fucking salad. That's the point of the story. Anyway, I gotta go. There's a guy here to fix the thing. All right, yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. I'll tell you whose baby it was next time. Yeah, definitely will. Real important stuff, Frank. Yeah, okay. We're back, 1977. Talk about the Passion. A lot of stuff here, but in the interest of just switching it up a little, I decided to just tone it down a little on these because the last few, when I first started the idea of this, the idea was to talk about stuff that sort of shaped my life, or like my trajectory of music, and I think on a lot of those I had like a stack of 37 records here, and I'm talking about Budgie and stuff like this, which is stuff I love, but it didn't really wasn't really like impactful in my life or something as much as the stuff we're going to talk about tonight. And I think moving forward, and I think the main reason for that is 1977 is sort of around the time where I start having memories of listening to music and seeing, we went to see live music and that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, a lot of good stuff happened. And so I'm going to kind of just stick with some of the more important ones. And then we'll breeze through some of the other ones at the end here. But we're going to immediately start with Let There Be Rock, AC/DC. Let there be punk rock, because there's going to be a lot of that on this tonight. Obviously punk rock was, a lot of debut records came out that year. But we're going to get to that. But let's talk about my favorite AC/DC studio record. We'll get into that. Why that is. I can't tell if I'm lining this up. Anytime I rewatch these, I'm like, what the things like down here. Anyway, you know what the album looks like. So I love AC/DC. A week doesn't go by that I probably don't listen to at least a couple AC/DC songs. And I may have probably mentioned this before, but I love both singers. Bon Scott, obviously, the Bon Scott era is pretty airtight. There's not many stinkers on any of those records. And Brian is on, he's on what, 7 records, and Brian is on however many more they've done. So when you kind of stick with a formula like AC/DC or, Motorhead, the Ramones and stuff like that, you're bound to, start getting some stinkers on albums later on down the line. But, early on these AC/DC records, at least, for me, up to, all these Bon Scott records, obviously. And then, Brian Johnson, I love them up to like, Fly on the Wall. I know people kind of shit on that record, but I like that record. Flick of the Switch was great. That's like one of those underrated ones that, a lot of us talk about being like just like a great record. But we'll get into that one eventually. We'll probably go through all the AC/DC albums up to, 1985-ish. So this is the band's 4th record, and the first to utilize the famous AC/DC logo that they would come to use throughout the rest of, for most of their stuff. This is actually like an actual testament to, fucking rock and roll. Played with balls, not taking itself too seriously, but seriously enough that, this record will punch you in the face and just laugh at you on the ground. Especially if you're not listening to it loud enough. And, if you're not listening to your AC/DC loud, then, what the fuck are you doing? I have a quote from a review here. I have all sorts of drinks here tonight again. Last time I had 3, tonight we have 4. This is the hot water lemon honey thing. So this fellow or person, Julian Marozalek of The Quietist, described the album as a stepping stone from the glam rock and toilet wall poetry of its predecessors to the gelling and building of their sound achieved on their masterpiece, Power Edge. Concluding that Let There Be Rock contains perfect music for adolescents with rampant hormones for those who view Arrested Development as a lifestyle option rather than an affliction. I can get behind that. I think Arrested Development is a fine way to go through life. Sometimes, maybe not now as an adult, but yeah. And I don't know why, I give AC/DC less shit for their lyrics than, like Kiss. At least some of the questionable ones, which there's a lot of them. This album, fucking opens with a song called Go Down, which I'm sure you probably can know what that means. And these guys, like, what? Like, these guys are always obsessed, and it's on the next one we're going to talk about by another band. These guys always call their thing their love. Let me put my love into you. Imagine, like, this is my love. All right, I'll never do that again. Sorry. Frank, we'll edit that out. Yeah, but yeah, so this record opens with Go Down, and it's filled with some of the best songs. The Problem Child shows up on here again, which was on Dirty Deeds. Darn Dirt Cheap, Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, which is an amazing live song. What else we got on here? Bad Boy Boogie. Whole Lot of Rosie, of course, one of their bigger songs. Doggy. I mean, this whole album smokes. And but my favorite song on this record, and it might be yours, is Overdose. Which is, I think Bon Scott shines the most on these sort of long bluesy songs. And this one, I recently read it's Lars Ulrich, out of that band Metallica. It's his favorite AC/DC song. So it's not my favorite AC/DC song, but it's probably my favorite on here. And also, this album cover is one of the best album covers ever. And then the back cover, just that iconic picture of Angus Young. Good stuff here. We got some good stuff here. We're going to be hitting some... so this record... Why their arms are all blue? Did someone check their oxygen levels? It might be... Something might have happened. And then, I have to add, this morning on my way to work, I was going a little late. I had an appointment. A lot of appointments lately. But things are looking pretty good. This stuff's starting to come back in. I'm ready to have a beard again. We're really talking about that. But yeah, I think this is probably the best album cover. Maybe next to Highway to Hell. Did I say that? Probably. But anyway, so I was listening to this morning in the car, and the song "Let There Be Rock," which is like what I said, it's a literal like testament to rock and roll. It's like very, let there be rock, obviously. But the part where it's just bass, during the verses when it's just bass and drums, and then I think it's like a minute and 2 seconds in when Malcolm Young comes in, and it's just like you're immediately reminded why he's like the best rhythm guitar player ever. Ask guys like Scott Ian and James Hetfield, who are great rhythm players in their own right. And I know obviously all those guys. Malcolm Young is a god to those people, and also Malcolm Young is the one member of AC/DC that kind of looks like their fan base. I probably bought more, Sinsemilla and, Mexican brick weed off of dudes that look like Malcolm Young in my teenage years, being a burnout as a kid, holds some, dear memories to me. And, that's one of them, buying shitty weed off of guys that look like Malcolm Young that were, probably, 19 and I was, 14, which is just kind of, it's not a thing you should be doing at 14, But I'm here now. I'm still alive and well. That song, Johnny Winter, Edgar Winter, Circus of Power did a great cover of that. Let's talk about Circus of Power. I bet I could get people on here. Keith Bennett. Since we're already in the neighborhood of rock and roll, let's just get this out of the way, okay? This is an album called Love Gun by the band Kiss. Who is a band that, people think they suck. It's okay. You can think things suck. These guys think about things that suck a lot of the time. That was a terrible joke. We'll cut that out too. Okay. We're going to get demonetized even though we don't make money doing this. Yes. Right? But, as I'm going through the years of, listening to this stuff, this is, one of the first ones that sort of I have memories of because, I had Rock and Roll Over and then, I got this in 77 and, sure, a band with a song about, having your private parts, encased in a mold. Probably not what a 7-year-old kid should be listening to. But, I was listening to Ian Gillan and, guys like Ian Gillan and, fucking Gene Simmons and what's his name? It's the other guy I'm thinking of. Ian Gillan. All right, we'll cut this out of here. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I had something written down here. It doesn't fucking matter. I talk about that later. I don't know what I'm fucking doing here. I had no idea what that song Plaster Caster was about. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, we're back here. I may cut that out. I might leave that in. Sometimes it makes it, it's a little funny. Watch me lose my fucking mind over here. By the way, this is, Shock Me was like this, I was a Shock Me kid, which, by the way, this is the first time Ace sings lead on a record. And so, everyone sings on this record. And also, one of the better songs in this record is not Plaster Caster, Almost Human, which another one. I was listening to this record in the car today, and I was like, this is like the Melvin, there's a bunch of Kiss songs where you can hear that the Melvins were definitely influenced by Kiss. Obviously they've talked about it. But this song specifically, Almost Human, that's a good song. And it's like songs like that where you get upset that you probably couldn't convince like a hater of the band that this is a cool song. Sure, Paul Stanley's little "I'm almost human" is a little weird, but it's an awesome song. So stick that in your pipe, Kiss haters. Us Kiss people know that song. If you're a Kiss fan, put in the comments that you know that that's a good song. But this also has, this one, it takes. The thing about this record, the back cover of it, the songs are listed in like a different order. It's kind of weird. It's not in the order of what they're on here. I don't know why they did that. What the hell is that about? But anyway, it takes them 2 songs to get creepy with the song Christine 16, which is, I think Jeffrey Epstein penned that one, maybe. And that's another one of those where it's it's catchy as fuck. So it's like hard to, skip that one. But also that part in the middle where, Gene does that little spoken word thing. It's not a good look there. So, we had been living in Los Angeles for a year or so at this point. And my dad was, obviously able to get a lot of concert tickets as well as Dodgers games, which is why I was a Dodgers fan before a Red Sox fan. Because when we moved out there, I was, 6. And I don't even think I ever went to Fenway Park, but my, dad and, brother were Boston fans. So my first games were Dodgers games and Angels games. And Angels were fine, but the Dodgers had fucking Steve Garvey and Ron Say and Davey Lopes, Don Sutton. And they were just fun to go see. And we had they had the A&M record seats, which were a few rows back from the Dodgers dugout. So that was good stuff. Good memories of that stuff. So, one of the good memories of that summer was, I had this record. It came out, I think, in June. And then my dad said, we're going to go see Kiss. They're going to be at the LA Forum with this band Cheap Trick. And they're doing 4 nights. We're going to go to one of the nights. I don't remember what one, but... And this is when they this is where they recorded Alive 2. So he had got Cheap Trick live at Budokan, I guess, because he was, maybe curious about what the opener band was going to be about. Or he probably knew about them. But he played me their cover of Ain't That a Shame, which I don't think, well, I did know because he told me it was a Fats Domino song. But I love that, like, immediately, that whole drum intro. And I feel like I'm going to sneeze. I don't think I'm going to. And then, of course, Surrender and I Want You to Want Me were great on that record. And so we went to this show. First time I see Kiss. Something is vibrating. Is it this? This is tea. Just black tea. It's okay. What are we talking about? Kiss? So this is the first show that I saw Kiss. We had floor seats. And on the stage, and I talked about this before, it's kind of a tired story, but there was a snake statue. There was Gene Simmons' thing. And, even before they came out, they couldn't hide all their shit because they had so much stuff. But that statue was right at the front, next to to the right of his mic stand or whatever. But it had a little cauldron on top, and there was little wisps of smoke coming out of it. And, of course, we missed, because of LA traffic, we missed Cheap Trick, or I think we got there late for them. They're probably playing Good Night Now. But I did end up getting to see them when we moved back to Boston with my mom and brother in like 1980. My dad got us tickets to see them at the Boston Garden on the Dream Police tour with fucking Rick Derringer. Rock and roll hoochie coo. Did somebody say keep on rocking? Yeah, they did. That was a top 5 concert. The Cheap Trick Dream Police tour. That fucking record rules. And that show was just, it was amazing. It was great to see them because they were like a band I loved for like a few years at that point. And so it was great to see them. We're going to talk about them in a few minutes here. Not to spoil the fucking party, but they did put 2 records out in 1977. So of course we're going to get to those. So the concert was awesome. And then the next time we saw them was the following year at Magic Mountain, where they recorded or filmed parts of their terrible and awesome movies, Phantom of the Park, which I watch like once a year. And I get my friend Steve Hill out of Worcester, Mass, formerly of Newton, Mass, originally Lynn, Mass, briefly in Salem for a bit, some other places around there. He's been around. Gave me a Blu-ray player recently, and I have those Kiss DVDs. It was like their anthology. It's just like a ton of live stuff and TV appearance, but it has the movie on there, which I had a bootleg video of for years, but this is, oh, it's a fucking it's a Blu-ray of it, or this is the DVD. But I watch that like once a year. I could probably recite every line from that terrible piece of shit of a movie, but I love it. It's a fucking great movie. But this, this record's great. Shock Me obviously rules. I Stole Your Love. Paul Stanley stole your love. He does a lot of bad things, but he's been wronged by women over and over, so of course he's going to steal your love. Tomorrow and Tonight is a great one, and it's another one of those I feel like it's too hard. It's too hard to hide Kiss songs from people now. Like you couldn't. There's certain bands where you can sneak onto like a playlist or a mix and play for someone and tell them it's like something else, and then be like, I got you, it's Fish, or whatever. But I feel like Kiss, these guys, it's harder and harder to do that because people know their voices. But they have a lot of songs I think you guys would really like. We're just going to get by some of the lyrics. But, and then they did a terrible, sort of like when they reverse gender songs, and they did Then She Kissed Me, that old, 50s song, which is terrible. So that's the only skippable song in that record for me, I think. Even like I said, Christine 16 gets kind of creepy there, but it's so fucking catchy. It's hard to just skip that one. What are you going to do? So yeah, this is one of the records I think if you were going to own one Kiss record, that's probably the one to own. It's a good record. So it's only logical then to talk about Cheap Trick. I just got this Saturday. We were, me and Steve, the fellow I was just talking about with the Blu-ray player, we went out to this antique place out in Acton, I think. It's a really cool place. A lot of old stereo music equipment. And there's a woman owns the business, and she repairs all these instruments and amps, apparently. But they have a lot of records there, and I picked this up because I didn't have this one. I don't have In Color, the other one that came out this year. But they had this, and this album's fucking awesome. And I don't think it's, it's probably I don't know. I have no idea what an original. It doesn't matter. I like the music of this record. And this is when they were putting all four of them on the album cover. Because after this, if you remember, they started putting just the cute guys on the cover. Tom and Robin and Bun E and Rick. Got really. We're not putting this away. What are you fucking doing there, buddy? We haven't fucking talked about it yet. Jesus Christ. What do we want? The tea. We have coffee. They don't tell you when you work in tech how many, just the swag that you get. Fleece fucking. I'm not a fleece wearer, obviously. Those guys, the fleece guys. You probably know 30 of those guys. Nice guys. Iced espresso. 4 shots of espresso. Almond milk, ice. We got water. We got that lemon and the tea. We're doing pretty good here tonight. Let's move it along, though. Cheap Trick, first album. It's only logical to kind of put these guys right after Kiss, because this sort of, I think, is a good segue into what's going to happen after this, which is punk rock music for me. Not that they were a punk band in any manner. I mean, kind of. But they have, that attitude is there, and the feel is kind of there. And like I said, when I first heard these guys, it was on, live at Budokan. And that was pretty much what I listened to. And I think my brother had Heaven Tonight, which I listened to a lot as well. But when I finally heard In Color, even to my young ears, I thought the songs sounded like thinner and just not as full as the stuff on how it sounded on live at Budokan. And Tom Peterson agreed, the bass player. He said the band were deeply dissatisfied with the production. The second record has all these great songs, and it doesn't sound anything like us with that Shakey's Pizza Parlor version of "I Want You to Want Me." When I hear that version now, I go, "Oh my God, is that lame?" I don't think it's lame. But if you don't get the Shakey's Pizza Restaurant reference, let me just tell you some stuff. Okay? Shakey's Pizza. I just learned this like yesterday that the Shakey's Pizza was founded in Sacramento, California on April 30th, 1954 by Sherwood Shaky Johnson and Ed Plummer. Johnson's nickname resulted from nerve damage following a bout of malaria suffered during World War II. Ouch. So they called him Shaky. Imagine doing that now. Like, hey, shake, like to your friend who's got, some sort of thing that makes him shake. Hey, Shaky, get over here. Can I borrow your umbrella? We're going over to I think we got to go pick up the gallons of paint for the thing that we're doing. Oh, you don't have an umbrella? That's all right. So Shakey's Pizza, early on, they would play Dixieland jazz in there. Like live bands would be in there. There'd be a guy on a piano. They would have those straw hats. I found some pictures that I'll put up on the thing here. And so that's kind of what Tom Peterson was talking about, because it has that like kind of jumpy feel to it with that, it's the piano is really, I mean, the production on that record is, it's like, I think the label was sort of pressuring them to be a little more slick sounding than the first record. But, I don't think it's as bad as Tom Peterson says it is. I think, but his description of the song is spot on. But, back to Shakey's Pizza, up until the 70s, the menus there had lyrics to all these, the songs that these people were playing in there. And can you imagine being in there like high on, Colombian Gold? You're on your way to like the 10 years after concert with your girlfriend, and all of a sudden they bust out. The whole fucking restaurant starts singing "Hello, My Baby" or something, and you're in there fucking eating your fucking pizza and Mojo potatoes. Talk about those in a second here. This was also one of those places where, birthday parties and you would go there for a Little League. When we first moved out there, we were also always in the San Fernando Valley, but we lived in Encino, and I played Little League there, and then I played up in Northridge, which is on the other side of the valley. But we would often go to this Shakey's Pizza, which is still there on Reseda Boulevard in Devonshire, in between Devonshire and Chatsworth Boulevard. And it's still there. And I when I was living there as an adult a few years ago, I went in there a few times. It's not like the best place, but it's almost like a buffet style for lunch. You go in there and they have their pizza, which isn't really that good. But then they had these things which are essentially like breaded potato wedges, which sounds amazing, actually. But probably not the best thing for you. But they had those, and that was sort of their famous thing. And I think fried chicken, or chicken, yeah, I don't know if it was fried chicken. I don't remember, but I know. Anyway, I would go in there as an adult, and I would, it would bring back memories, because the place essentially looks the fucking same. A little more updated inside, but the building outside, it's in the same spot it was always there when I was, 7 years old, going there as a young baseball player. And but it also, brought back one of the best memories I ever had at this particular Shakey's Pizza. That is on Reseda Boulevard, in between Devonshire and Chatsworth. So we were in there, the family, getting a pizzas, whatever the fuck we were doing in there. And I went to the bathroom, and then on the way back, I spotted a cigarette machine. And if you're like under 42 years old, you might not know that we used to have cigarette vending machines. Is something howling? Nope. Are there these people with their dog? They leave the dog out all night. That must have been what that was. We also get animals. Animals. So I decided, I saw this cigarette machine that I wanted a pack of cigarettes. I said whatever the fuck I was, 7 years old. Yeah, 1977. It probably was, yeah. So I put my hand into the cigarette machine and my hand got stuck in there. Next thing you know, the staff of Shakey's Pizza is calling Northridge, California Fire Department, who then rescued me from the grips of this evil cigarette machine, which didn't really help because I did end up starting to smoke, like, probably like when I was like 7 years old here. So like 8 years after this, I started smoking. No, 6 years. I was smoking at like 13. It's kind of terrible, but I stopped when I turned 40. So 27 years with cigarettes, and now it's been 16 without them. I don't miss them. So yeah, that was a fun memory to talk about, right? Yeah, a lot of nice things happened to me when I was a kid. That made me who I am today. But anyway, the first Cheap Trick record. I got into this one later on because I, started with Budokan and then kind of went backwards through their catalog. And it's amazing how, different the sound quality, the recording is on this and in color. This one being a little more raw. And, there's some amazing songs in this one. And, the songs on this hit some pretty dark places. Suicide, a serial killer. There's a song about like being an older, there's like a very specific type of person who's like an older person that's into like teenagers, but just in between like 14 and 16. I don't know. It's a fucking PDF. However we slice it. But yeah, so that song. He's a Whore, Hello Kitties, Oh Candy, which was the one about suicide. And they hit some pretty dark places, and it's funny because when you think of Cheap Trick and sort of being like a power pop band, you imagine that all their songs are going to be like love songs, like the Beatles or whatever. But no, it's not. They hit some pretty dark places, and it's same on the next on In Color. One of my favorite songs on that record is Downed, which is a song about I guess depression and being overwhelmed, and this is just a great song. And another one of these where it's like I always love that in songs when it's this catchy song, and then when you finally hear what the lyrics are, you're like, oh, that's some fucking pretty deep shit. Excuse me. So that's one of them. And Guided by Voices did a great cover of that. I think it's a B-side on something from around the Maggie Earwig era, or maybe Isolation Drills era. But they did a pretty good cover of that, which makes sense. You can almost picture Guided by Voices doing that song. It almost sounds like it's built for them. But they had a number of songs in their catalog that went to some pretty dark places. But the In Color has some of their best songs too. As much as the production is different, it's still a great record. I Want You to Want Me, even though it's that Shakey's Pizza version. Come On, Clock Strikes 10, Big Eyes. It's just their catalog. I think I love, I need to sort of explore more of the later stuff because I go up to about All Shook Up, which I think is a great record. And that's the one I think George Martin produced. But that's a great record. But I know a lot of people like the ones after that. The one they put out last year was actually really good. It's a good record. It's just an awesome band. So like I said earlier, like when I started this thing, I wanted to kind of talk about stuff that sort of shaped my musical path and that kind of thing. So, of course, this, path eventually leads to, punk rock music, which, for me, obviously we talked about the Stooges before on here and MC5 and some of those like real early proto-punk bands. But 1977, the Clash puts out their first record, the Sex Pistols, the Damned, the XTC puts out their first. We're going to talk about a lot of these records. But but when I was listening to this stuff, some of it was around this time, the Sex Pistols record. But more like in the early 80s when I started, sort of, I was still listening to like metal stuff like AC/DC, obviously, and like Triumph and Rush, but then also Iron Maiden and stuff like that, Ozzy, but also stuff like even earlier on when I was like 11, we started getting into, because it was like 81, 82, Devo, The Clash, Blondie, Pat Benatar was big with me, the B-52s, so a lot of that stuff, the Police, was the stuff that I was digging, which makes sense to where I would end up, sort of listening to. So I'm gonna kind of touch on a little bit of each of these records, because there's a few here. Like I said, we're dialing it down tonight. We're not going to do like every 47 records that came out in 1977, and there's certainly going to be a lot of crying, because there is going to be some that I missed. But we're going to start with this one, the first Sex Pistols record. And this is an original. It's got the submission sticker. I don't know what, like pressing or whatever, but this record is one of my favorite records of all time by anyone. A perfect debut. There's no bad songs in this, really, in my opinion. And this ended up, at my house right after it came out, because they briefly were on A&M Records and got dropped before this record came out. And I think A&M released a God Save the Queen single and then like immediately had them all destroyed or something. I think that's the story there. But I imagine this ended up in my house because of that, and it ended up in my brother's room, but I used to sneak it out. And I was 7 years old, 1977, so hearing this record, which is like this just fucking overdriven, loud, and I'm going from Kiss Love Gun, and thinking that's like a heavy album, and then hearing this, however, I think this came out in October of 77, so it kind of makes sense when I think of like when some of these records came out. And the Damned beat them by 8 months. Their record came out in February. But this record, and this also had, the first time I heard, guys saying the F word on a record, and then, using the word abortion, which I don't know what the fuck that was. And at 7 years old, whatever, I'm just like, yeah, this is fucking awesome. It's loud. This guy's sneer is fucking cool. And the guitar sound is in your face, and it just sounded like everything is just like pushed into the red, which I fucking love. And I think this is a perfect, and for many years, this was a good starting point for getting into punk music. Maybe not now so much, because I feel like some of the, not many of the lyrics are bad on this, but, there's their whole, like, their image, with, Johnny Rotten wearing that shirt with the swastika on it, which, Mick Jagger wore that too, I don't think that would sit well with, younger people nowadays, or anyone today. It doesn't sit well with me. I just thought that was kind of like, that whole shock value thing was like, I don't know, like, when I got into hardcore music, that's when you sort of realized, like, that wasn't like a thing. Like, people just, like, when you would go to hardcore shows, you'd meet, guys like Al Quint, who's wearing like, a gray sweatshirt, which is, probably the same one he wears now that you always see him in. But just people looked like normal, like, obviously there was people with, I had a fucking leather jacket with pins and shit written all over it, and people had mohawks and Liberty spikes, but most of the people were just like, especially like in my sort of era towards the, when I was getting further in, like 85, 86, when Youth of Today and bands like that started coming around and adopting sort of the look they saw on those SSD and DYS records, with them essentially wearing dressed like jocks, kind of, which is funny because they sang about jocks. SSD, jock itch when that's on. What are we talking about? The Sex Pistols? Yeah, no skips on this one. It's a classic. And the other thing on this record, I always think that the song Submission sounds like Aerosmith to me, especially Johnny Rotten's little Steven Tyler yelp at the beginning there, yeep. I think he sounds like that was a terrible rendition of that, and I'll never do that again. Let's cut that out. So yeah, first Sex Pistols record rules, and then they put out that soundtrack which has a few good songs on it. And then there's that Flogging a Dead Horse. Yeah, I mean they have some stuff around, but essentially that's the record. And it's fucking, and it rules. The Clash put their debut album out, and this is another one I heard sort of after the other ones, because London Calling was big in our house, and I still think it's their best record, and as an American, I was gonna say I didn't realize the American version of this record didn't come out till 1979, but 77 it came out internationally, or at least in the UK, and I think it fits in with what we're doing here, so we're going to keep it. We're not going to wait till 1979 to talk about the first Clash record. It's very important we get to this one. And this is another one of those records where I didn't really understand the lyric, especially, when I think about, a 12-year-old me listening to a record where they're singing about the economic situation and racism in England and that kind of thing. I'm like, what? I don't know. But, like I said, this is what I was trying to say before. At the time, I was listening to guys like Paul Stanley, Ian Gillan, and, fucking Brian Johnson. So, what's some actual intelligent lyrics gonna hurt, And then later on, this is the kind of stuff I listen to. And, I love their cover of Police and Thieves on here, which, another one of these, a lot of times when I'm a young kid, I'm not pouring through the credits. So this wasn't one I knew was a cover necessarily when I first heard it. That's an awesome song. One of the best songs on the record. And, but the opener, Janie Jones, is about a woman who was a cabaret singer, I believe, and, ran a brothel. And she was arrested at one point, and when she was released, Joe Strummer wrote this ode to her, apparently. And this is also one of the songs the character Rob from Nick Hornby's High Fidelity movie, or book, and then the movie claims is one of the greatest track ones of any album, which, I don't know if I agree with that. It's in the world of the Clash. Safe European Home from the next, Give Him Enough Rope, and then London's Calling. I mean, there's no contest there. Even the one on fucking the last good record there. This is a service announcement. Let's Know Your Rights. That's a fucking awesome opener. So, sorry, fucking Rob. That's not the best opener of any of the Clash records. Okay, what's open Sandinista? No, I'm not going to ask Alexa. Does anybody know? I could look it up on the computer, but is it the Magnificent Seven? If that's the case, then we get a lock here, and Rob from fucking Chicago is wrong, or wherever he was. Well, he was in Chicago in the movie. And then, London's Burning is one of my favorites on here. And this is sort of the start of, the bands. I love bands like the Kinks and the Who, and the Jam, and the Clash, of course, because they had these lyrics. I had no fucking idea what they're talking about. But later on, as I got older, it, fascinated me. And it's, given me a lifelong fascination with England and you know, Scotland and just that whole area of the world, which I've never been to. And you know, I was planning on going there this year, but that got kind of sidetracked by some other stuff happening. But yeah, so some other stuff happens in 1977 in the world of punk rock music, and that is the Ramones spit out two of their best fucking records. Leave Home, which I have here. This is like a later, this is like one of those 180 prints. It's a heavy record. I mean, not like a heavy record. But this is, I fucking love Leave Home. I don't have, the other one is Rocket to Russia that came out. That's the other one that came out in 1977. So the Ramones, you know, they were definitely, you know, this might, you know, cause some, this might be considered sacrilege in some circles, but I think they were on like a, on a Beatles level of just putting out amazing music in a very short period of time. The Beatles put out 13 albums in 7 years, and the Ramones put out 7 albums in 7 years. You know, in the Beatles catalog, for me, you know, aside from maybe Yellow Submarine and maybe the stuff before Rubber Soul isn't their best stuff, but everything from Rubber Soul on is like, I mean, there's no real stinkers there. And then the Ramones, the same thing. You know, you got a little sort of light towards the end, but then the last, you know, the record they released in 1983, I think, which would have been 7 years later. In that 7-year period is Subterranean Jungle, which is a fucking great record, and we will talk about that when we get to that year. And that was sort of more of a return to their, you know, punk rock like root. You know, after, you know, they did End of the Century, which was you know, that had rock and roll radio on it. You know, I love all their shit. And it's another one of those bands like AC/DC. I don't go very long without listening to the Ramones, at least, you know, once a week, you know, whether it's one song or 5 songs. So yeah, they're, you know, one of my favorite bands of all time. And then lyrically, you know, they were a band that, you know, were one of the few bands that were able to, you know, appeal to both like nerdy guys that were maybe not the most socially adept young men like me, and girls. You know, who can you think of else that, you know, did that, you know? Weezer. I like some Weezer shit. Second album, first album. We're probably not gonna, well, maybe we'll get into that second record on here when we get to 1996 or whatever it is. But yeah, so these two Ramones records, you know, like I said, all the, you know, the lyrics on these were, you know, just, you know, give me shock treatment, Susie is a headbanger, Pinhead, and they're, you know, taking their cues from, you know, comic books, you know, late night sci-fi movies, and then, you know, of course, like the Beach Boys. So it's just like this weird mix of music that just appeals to, you know, I feel like there's people that love the Ramones, and then there's like myself, and there's people that are just like, yeah, like, you know, they have the Ramones Mania album, which I probably shouldn't say because I literally only have this in the Ramones Mania album. And the Ramones Mania album is a very nice overview of their catalog, so of their songs. It's a good compilation. I have a record of it in the CD. The CD was a constant for many years. But you know, and I don't have a favorite of these two. But if you were to hold a weapon to my head, I'd probably say "Hit Me with That Weapon." No, I'd probably just go with "Leave Home." You know, and I somehow only saw the Ramones once in the 90s, and it was, they were great, you know, they remain a constant in my life, and I kind of bummed out, you know, I'd be kind of bummed out if they didn't exist. So yeah, the Ramones. If you don't have this one, or just any Ramones albums, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck, man? Which drink are we going for, buddy? What are we doing? We're going to talk about the Jam in the City next. That's their first record. And the Jam were another one of these bands. The first time I heard them was that Snap. My brother had that Snap compilation, which is fucking awesome. It's like a 2-record set with I think around like 30 songs. That's another one of these, like, there was a time when like bands were putting out like great, greatest hits or just compilations. Like Squeeze singles going, Squeeze 45s and under, Buzzcocks singles going steady. The Cure, Staring at the Sea, which I think I might do an episode on that record at some point. I just talked about The Cure recently. Anyway, so that compilation was the first record I heard by the Jam. And I wouldn't sort of explore their catalog until later on. But this one remains one of my favorite records. It's just a fucking great record. And of course, another band whose lyrics I had no fucking idea what they're talking about. But one of my favorite songs on this, and I think one of their best songs, is Away from the Numbers, which is one of those ones where I think he's sort of frustrated with the mod scene and wants to kind of just step away from that for a little bit. Sort of be himself, be Paul Weller again. At least for a little bit. And then the song after that is the pretty fun cover of the Batman theme, and then of course the title track, In the City, which is a fucking great song. But yeah, punk rock, power pop, soul, mod rock, whatever you want to call it. The Jam are one of the best fucking bands. Another one of my favorite bands, and like an amazing trio. And we'll be talking about them a little bit more on here. So you don't worry about that at all. Because then we're going to talk about another debut. There's a lot of debuts happening in this year. So get ready. Get this guy. I don't have the vinyl of this, dude. Sorry, dude. But I have the CD here. This is just some random reissue from whatever. But this album, Nick Lowe captured these guys like perfectly on this. It sounds like it almost sounds live in the studio, and maybe it was recorded live in the studio. And I love this one equally as much as the Pistols record. I'm not touching the Sex Pistols record, actually. It's down there. I love this damn record as much as imagine that. I gotta get some move. I like the damn record as much as I like the Sex Pistols record. Down there. Let's have a little more of the espresso. I don't think we're. It's good stuff. So this record, the sound is like more dialed back than the Pistols record that, like I said, was like pushed in your face, which is appreciated here because Dave Vanian, they all sing on this, but Dave Vanian's the lead singer, but his vocals, and then just being able to hear what all these guys are doing, Brian James, Captain Sensible and Rat Scabies, you need that because they're fucking, it's like their first album, and they're like, and you're thinking, how long have these guys been playing? Like, because these guys put songs together, and this isn't my favorite. This is a fucking great record from start to finish. They do a great cover of I Feel Alright. I can't read this shit anymore. They put this stuff so small in there, but that's why you need the vinyl, man. You need the whole fucking thing. Yeah, bro. A great cover of I Feel Alright by the Stooges on here. Which a lot of people, GBH did a great cover of that. We're going to get in some GBH on here at one point. I think it might be one of those ones I do an episode on, like GBH's music. Not just from one record. They have some questionable lyrics as well. Why am I hiccuping? Because, I got this different shit going into my system. So The Damned. I've probably spent more time with the third record, Machine Gun Etiquette. That's my favorite Damned record. But this is, we'll get into that in 79. But this, and that record has Well, this record has the song. What am I trying to say here? Slow down. Let's fucking get the coffee. Does tea have caffeine? I think it does. This is like Yorkshire tea. I was like, oh, what are we talking about? Just kidding. I mean, that is what that is. Yorkshire? Sorry. So this record, what I was going to say is, my favorite record is Machine Gun Etiquette, but this song includes the song New Rose, so my opinion on that might be just completely fucking invalidated, you know? Like, this should be the best album because it has New Rose on it. Right? You can agree with that. You don't have to. We'll put that guy over there for now. So we got another debut. This is just a little guy. This is an EP by another one of my favorite bands that we're going to talk about on here a lot. And this is the band XTC. And it's the 3D EP. There's only 3 songs on here. My favorite one on here is... so this is released in 1977, obviously. My favorite here is Dance Band, written by the bass player Colin Moulding, who then went on to write 3 of their big singles. I think that came out in a row, where it was Life Begins at the Hop, Generals and Majors, and then Making Plans for Nigel, which, yeah, that's not a bad track record of writing. Imagine if that, oh yeah, I wrote those 3. But this song is great, and this is, you know, one of sort of the dancey, you know, it's called fucking Dance Band, obviously. And then the other 2 songs are Andy Partridge songs. But this, you know, keyboardist Barry Andrews appears here, and he's on this EP, and the Go-To and White Music, the 2 full lengths that come out after this. And then he went on to form that band Shriekback with, I think, is it Dave Allen from Gang of 4, maybe? Am I an idiot for not knowing that? Probably. I'm an idiot for a lot of things. That might be one of them. If you know, let me know. I'm just kidding. I'll probably figure it out 10 minutes after I stop recording this. Take it easy. But so Andy Partridge, you know, I think he's easily mentioned in the same conversation as folks like Lennon and McCartney, what's the guy's name? Paul McCartney, the guy in the Beatles. And like Brian Wilson and folks like that. But the thing with Andy Partridge was he had this gift of being able to put that, you know, those kind of like amazing songwriting skills into like really unconventional ways, especially on these early records. You know, as they got further on into their career, it was more almost like sort of straight up pop, but like obviously just well crafted and great stuff. But yeah, just the songwriting in this band is fucking ridiculous. And Science Friction, I think, ended up on that might be on White Music. That's the other song on here. And then She's So Square. That one's pretty good. But this is a cool EP, and it's just like a you know, a little slice of what's going to come to happen with this band moving. You know, and I didn't really start listening to these. You know, I listened to them in the 80s. Because they had a lot of great hits, and but maybe in the last, like, I don't know. Once you get old, you see, you know, when you're trying to like do time frames, I'm like, 20 years ago, and you're like, that was only 2005, and I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. So I don't know, 30 years, 38, I don't know what the fuck. So we get a couple more punk rock records to end the punk rock section of this thing, and then we're gonna wrap it up with a couple of we're gonna go into a whole other direction. You'll see. You might be like, I'm out. But the Saints, I'm Stranded, and then the Dead Boys, Young, Loud, and Snotty. I don't have this Saints record. I should. And these are bands that, like I've said on here before, where a lot of times I just like came late to the party. The Saints were one of those. I was talking to my friend John tonight about that, and I said, I think I really only been talking about, like, listening to them for like 3 years or something. You know, 3 or 4 years is, you know, I knew about them because Sheer Terror did a great cover of was it Everything's Fine on that sort of later EP from the early 90s, or the album. That was that major label album. They did a fucking great cover of that, the horns and everything. But then, for whatever reason, I just like started listening to them a few years ago, and I'm like, what was I like? I feel like a lot of these older sort of legacy like punk bands that were. I think I was off put because the people that were like telling you to listen to them were like annoying old guys. Those guys with like a CBGB's shirt and like the same leather jacket they've had since 1980. And I imagine I'm one of those guys now with the shit I talk about. I'm like, oh man, you gotta fucking hear this Corrosion of Conformity Technocracy EP. You'll love it. Yeah, I know you're only 20. And your favorite band is Geese. But yeah, you'll really like the Technocracy EP. Trust me. So I'm not going to do shit like that. Just listen to what you listen to. But I like to. That's why we do this. We talk about the stuff. You talk about the stuff. And then we move on. And we listen to the stuff on our own or with our friends and animals and in the car. And life goes on. What would we do without all this great music, right? Right. Dead Boys, Sex Pistols. Boom. Fuck you. So, and this record is, these guys are from Australia. Not these guys, it's the Dead Boys. But let's talk about the Saints, the one we don't have. Let's put the picture up here. Or on the whole thing. It's just like this noisy, they have opened for AC/DC, I guess, in like late 76, early 77. And this is just like a noisy record, and like the whole thing smokes from start to finish, and I fucking love his voice. The third song, Wild About You, just rolls over you like a fucking Stooges song. It sounds like a Stooges song from like 10 years before the Stooges existed or something. It's like this, I don't know, like proto, just like, where'd you guys come up with this shit? So yeah, if you don't know this band, No Time is my favorite song on that record. Not that. That's the Dead Boys. Stop looking over there. Fucking leave that one alone. You go over there. We're still talking about the Saints, but no, we're not anymore. But if you don't know this band, I went through their whole catalog, and I don't even remember how many, but I think there's like, I don't even know how many albums they have, but I have a playlist where I just put all their shit on it, and it's fucking all fucking great. This is a great band. And the good thing about like discovering like stuff like this later on in life, I find is then you get this whole new thing. You're like, oh shit. And then especially like when especially if a band has like a big catalog of stuff, because then you're like, oh wow, like if you're getting into the Sex Pistols, you're like, all right, this is great. What else we got? What is this soundtrack? What the fuck is this? Who Killed Bambi? Why is there a song about the fucking Belson concentrated? Like, what is happening here? And what's this cover of My Way? I like that record. I get it over there. We're not going to talk about that record on here, though. And then the Dead Boys were always a band I liked, and I'd probably at least, I'd say no less than 10 bands, probably more, cover, Sonic Reducer, and I always think, how about like Ain't Nothing to Do, or, something else on it, or the one what's the one where there's like, is it fucking, I don't know, the one where it's, I'm a dead boy, but another one of these bands I got into sort of later in life, not like 2 years ago, but when I finally just like listened to this, because I, knew a few of these songs, especially Sonic Reducer, obviously that's their big song. But when I finally like got this record, or just started listening to it, this is sort of like a later issue of this record. I fell in love with this. This is a great fucking record. And, Cheetah Chrome's guitar leads, stab you in the face. And Stiv Bators just has that, his voice is pure, just like, fuck you. And, this became like a favorite of mine a few years ago. Again, I'm slow to the party. What are you going to do? Sue me. So that kind of concludes our, we're going to obviously, it's 1977. The floodgates have been open for a lot of that kind of stuff. So, especially once we get into like the 80s and then we get into hardcore and stuff, it's going to be, we'll probably go back to listing 37 albums an episode or whatever. But I'm skipping over a slew of records, which we'll quickly blast through at the end here. I'll pull the playlist up on the laptop here. But before we take that, let's take a quick turn to two of my favorite bands of all time. Put out records in 1977. The first one is the band Rush, and they released Farewell to Kings, which their track record at this point is pretty flawless, except for maybe the song I Think I'm Going Bald on 2112. And this record they recorded somewhere in England with Terry Brown. And is that the guy? Terry Brown? And they had released All the World's a Stage, the live record. So it gave them some time to work on this record. And they all started adding more like synthesizers, and Neil added more different percussion to his ever-growing beast of a set, which got pretty obnoxious and then he kind of toned it down sort of later. Not obnoxious, it's fucking Neil. He can do what he wants, and he used every one of those fucking things. So quit your friggin' bitching. There's a lot of swearing on this, a lot of anger, even though I feel good. I'm in a pretty good mood tonight. It's not 3 a.m. Like last time I did one of these. And Neil stays, there's not really a bad song on this one. My favorite song on here, I think, is Xanadu. And it's right closer to the heart on here, is Under 3 Minutes. And apparently that was going to be the name of this record, which would have been terrible. Because Farewell to Kings is perfect. And, but it's got, the song of Farewell to Kings is great. Like I said, Xanadu. But then Cygnus X1, which is just this, it's an amazing kind of terrifying song, lyrically and musically, and Getty hits these like really fucking high notes. They continue the story of that song on the Hemispheres record, which has part 2 of that. But I think that song's about like a spaceship going like with one guy on it that gets sucked into a black hole, and it's just like you're like, oh, of course, I guess there's one of these records that we were listening to it, we're like 13, getting high as a kite, and like listening to this song about like a guy getting sucked into a black hole, and this is like the song like gets real intense at the end, and it was kind of terrifying for a little young man like myself, scared out in the world, listening to scary music like Rush, Triumph. That outdoor light goes on sometimes. Speaking of lights going on, let's turn on our love lights and I'm just kidding. But one of my favorite bands put out this. How cool is that, though? I mean, you have to say, though. I mean, what are you gonna say to that? So the Grateful Dead puts out Terrapin Station in 1977. And, this era, their studio albums on Arista Records, are very smooth and slick sounding. But it's just a fucking great record. And, maybe if it's like, and this is one of those records too, like the song Terrapin Station, which is all of side 2 here. It's funny, Jerry Garcia doesn't sing on this record until that. Like the whole side one is all Bob Weir and Donna, who is more. She's more enjoyable in the studio. I think sometimes in those live recordings, it's cuts into your soul a little bit there. She needs to kind of tone it down a little. Just kidding. I mean, not really, but I like her better in the studio. But so this record, I feel like the song Terrapin Station is one of those like if you're like Getting Into the Dead and you like pass, American Beauty and Working Man's Dead and maybe Europe 72, then you're like here, this is Terrapin Station. Just go right, don't worry about side 1. Go start it on side 2. Like, I don't even know why they did that. I think when I listen to this record, I play side 2 first. It's the song Terrapin Station. It's iconic, a great live song, but and like I said, it hits different. It hits different in the studio. It's just there's a lot going on with that song. It's like a long story, and which I still don't even fucking understand what it's about. But yeah, this album also includes, one of my favorite Bob Weir songs, "Estimated Profit," which is one of the best live songs, especially from between when they debuted it. Or I think they debuted this the same night as the song "Terrapin Station." 226.77. Look it up. Oh, if that's right, I'll put it up on the screen. If not, I'll give you $10. And then, what else is on here? Oh, the under 3 minute, another under 3 minute song, "A Passenger," which Phil Lesh wrote, and Bob and Donna sing that one together. And then, Samson and Delilah. Bob, why am I looking at this when I have because I can't read that. It's like black on red. I get these other glasses on that I never wear for some reason. And, yeah. And then like Dancing in the Streets, like a disco version of that. Yeah. Anyway, let's finish up here. I felt better slimming this down. So let's just blast through, I have a few of the ones here that I pulled out. I have this big playlist, like I've said, that I make for these, and this one had 341 songs, and there's a lot of albums on here that we didn't get to. But the first one, actually, let's talk about. This is one of my favorite records. I don't know why I listened literally when I was getting ready to put this together tonight. I was like, okay, and I'm like, you didn't talk about Steely Dan Asia, but like I said before, I've been kind of I think I've been shadow banned by certain circles of friends to not talk about Steely Dan. There's like a cabal. Is that a word? What that means is like a secret society, a group of friends, men and women, that are like, ugh, you fucking talking about Steely Dan again? Yeah, as a matter of fact, I am. Deal with it. Especially this one. This is their best record. This is the first one I heard. This was big in our house in 1977. One of this amazing recording, and just 7 songs. And I identify with the song Deacon Blues, that guy that's just I'm just kidding. Yeah, just this jazz rock album that it's funny, these guys were from basically from New York, and but had this just very LA sound. Back in 2011, I think, or 13, I moved back to Los Angeles, and like an idiot, I just had a bunch of money to throw around, and well, it wasn't like an idiot, because I had this experience where I went to see Steely Dan do 3 nights at the Universal Amphitheater, where they performed the entire Asia album, The Royal Scam, and Gaucho. And I went to each night. And I remember the first night was Asia, and I think, was it? It might have been. Yeah, it was Asia. Because I remember where I was sitting. But as I was, so what I mean about had a indispensable, no, what's the word? I just had money to waste at the time, so I decided to buy. This is funny, because nowadays it would probably be $6,000, but I had the first night I had 3rd row, the second night I had 2nd row, and then the Gaucho night I had 7th row or something. But I remember the night of Asia, walking to my seats, and I look, and there's Joe Walsh sitting there, and I'm thinking I have better seats than fucking Joe Walsh here. Fuck you, Joe Walsh. Not really. I love Joe Walsh. Good guy. A lot of good music there. So yeah, seeing them play this live, this was a record, my dad played for us a lot, and it just, it's a fucking great record. And I could talk about this one all fucking night, but like I said, we were trying to tone this down a little. Because also, this came out. This is another one I fucking missed. This is my favorite Aerosmith record most of the time because it has the song I Want to Know Why on it. Bright Light Fright, Sight for Sore Eyes, Draw the Line, which fucking rules. How about that version that's on, isn't the version on Live Bootleg, it's not listed because the album wasn't out yet or something. I don't know if that's why, but I feel like it's on there, like it's the end of one of the sides, but it's not listed on there. Kings and Queens. But this is an awesome record, and this particular copy was owned by TT. So TT, if you happen to be out there, like I always say on these, and you want your copy of Draw the Line back, you can go shit in your hat, because I'm going to keep this record, TT, for the rest of my life, however long that may be. However long I may run. How's that segue? Because now we're talking about Neil Young. American Stars and Bars. This is kind of a weird, disconnected record. It's kind of all over the place, but this has Like a Hurricane on it and Homegrown. And these would show up on when Neil reissued some other fucking one a few years ago. I think it was that album Homegrown. It has those versions on there, or those songs in there. But that's I love Neil Young, and but that's not like really a great Neil Young record. It's kind of all over the place. And then we weren't going to really talk about live records, but this Parliament Live P-Funk Earth Tour record is just a fun. Obviously, it's Parliament Live, and it's got Mike Hampton on it. So, like I've talked about, is one of my favorite members of Parliament. And this says this includes a 22 by 20 through full color poster and iron-on T-shirt transfer. I wonder if I have those. You fucking serious? Someone steal that shit? Casablanca Records, just like Kiss. You ever want to read a good book? There's a great book on the history of Casablanca Records. That's I find that I can't remember what the name of it is, but that's a really good book. So that's the last of ones I own. But also, here's the ones I missed, and you're probably gonna be like, "Oh, you fucking suck, man." Judas Priest, Sin After Sin, the first Motorhead album, which is a fucking great album. It's not their best record, but it's dirty and raw. It's like that's their first record, and you're like, all right, this is gonna be a fun band to listen to. And then I got this playlist, Pink Floyd Animals, another fucking great one. Marquee Moon by Television. I apologize to the 61-year-old guys out there that are watching this that I failed to mention that one. But I do love that record. Big fan. I don't own a copy currently. I have CDs of a lot of these, and like I've said, some of them are out and about. Some of them I rebuy, but I have a closet full of stuff, and most of the CDs are in there. UFO Lights Out. I thought I had a copy of that. I don't have CD or vinyl of that. Iggy Pop, The Idiot. What are we doing here, buddy? Exodus by Exodus, Pleasures of the Flesh comes out. No, I'm just kidding. Bob Marley and the Wailers, Exodus, the Jay Giles Band, Monkey Island. I do have a copy of that over there, but we're going to talk about Jay Giles Band. Going for the One by Yes, which I told this story the other day to my friend Steve. Let's talk about Steve a little more. Good guy. I told him about how we had like a Yankee swap thing when I was like 10 at like the school, and some fucking jerk off I end up with Going for the One by Yes. That's the one I get. Fuck. I remember like taking it home being like, what is this? I maybe knew Roundabout by them, but I was like, there's a naked guy on here in front of those buildings in Century City. Like, what's happening here? Styx, The Grand Illusion. It's a good one. I'm not going to fucking lie. Thin Lizzy, Bad Reputation. I'm really doing Thin Lizzy a injustice on this. I should get some fellas together, or women, whoever wants to come on and talk about that. Thin Lizzy. I'm kind of like just doing an episode on Thin Lizzy because they got a lot of good stuff. Expect No Mercy by Nazareth. That's a good one. Spectres by BOC, which is not my favorite record, but that's got Are You Ready to Rock and Godzilla. I like that song. Death Valley Nights, I like that song too. That's a good song. Wire, Pink Flag, another punk rock one I missed. Is that their first record? Because if that's a debut. Suicide, self-titled Suicide record. Taken by Force by the Scorpions. Like, what are you doing here, buddy? Well, first of all, I don't want to talk about records for 2 hours and bore these friggin' people. Equal Rights by Peter Tosh. And then East of the River Nile by Augustus Pablo. That's one of my favorite, one of those dub records. I love, I need to get some more reggae records. And a good way to do that would be, I'd like to give my friend Brian Coleman a free little advertising push. He was with the store Wantlist Records, with a gentleman by the name of Dave, and he's since split from that store. Now has a store I just went in this past weekend called Root for Us. It's in Newton, Mass. I'll put it up on the screen here. He wrote a couple of great books on hip hop music, and just a really good friend of mine, good guy. But he's got a great store that's only been open briefly. It's right in the same building as a dispensary. So if you're into that kind of thing, jazz cigarettes, vapes, all that kind of stuff that you crazy kids are into nowadays, they get that over there. And then you go over here. He posts on Instagram like stuff he gets in, but he's just got in a ton of great reggae. But like a vinyl only store, very very strictly vinyl and just, but not like a snotty vinyl, it's just a good shop, and he's a good guy to go and just kind of like shoot the shit with. Root for Us Records. Go visit him. Tell him I sent you. But yeah, so that's 1977 in a nutshell. I have no idea how long I've been talking. I feel like it's probably way longer than I should have been, but like I said, I was going to tone this down, but I don't believe I might have. The scary thing about this too is I filmed this on the iPhone, and I just got to do stuff, but I can't tell if it's, if I can screen mirror it onto, I don't know why I'm telling you this. 1977, great year. We're done here. We'll see you in 1978, where I'm going to have a guest with me, and that's going to be a fun one to do. And then pretty soon we're going to be into the 80s, and stuff is really going to start to get fun for us. So thank you again for watching, and if you're not familiar with some of these records, go out, seek them out, play them. If you are familiar with them, get into the comments and let me know what you think. And lately I've been shitty about replying to comments, but I do try to get back to all of those. So I need to go back and look. There's been a few there. So I always appreciate the comments and likes. And, if you like what you hear or see here, hit that. Oh, there's one of those people. Smash that subscribe button, man. You don't have to smash it. You can just click it and, you're on your phone. Yeah, I'll subscribe to this guy. Seems all right. He's wearing a fucking Anthrax shirt, but whatever. Well, it's okay. He seems to like Kiss and the Grateful Dead a little too much. Anyway, we'll see you in 1978. Thanks for watching.